Seventh race weekend at the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup. We're in Innsbruck in Austria, twice an Olympic venue, in 1964 when it was a natural track, and in 1972, the artificial track that we still compete on to this day. And after cold, fast ice in training, it looked as though the first day of action could bring track record speeds. First up to see if it was going to hold out, women's skeleton. The start in Innsbruck is critical. It's the shortest track we race on. So when Kimberly Boss of the Netherlands popped the spur in the first heat and had to wrestle the sled down to turn one, it looked like a disaster. Into heat 2, 3/10 off the lead, still tied for 11th place after that disappointing first run. Kimberly had put it all behind her, and after being ahead of her personal best in training, was hoping for big things in the second heat. She got them on her Bromley sled. Letting it fly was the answer. A couple of minor taps, but the best speed we'd seen from anybody down the track. A phenomenal second heat where she summed up all of her abilities to blitz through the track record and leave it trailing in her wake. The first 52-second run. Kim Marmons of Belgium had a slender advantage over her Low Countries rival. Kim took her country and her own first ever World Cup medal with a bronze last season. 5th place after the first heat, tied 1900s away from the lead. She dropped behind the fast-starting Kimberly Boss, but stayed in contention all the way down. It was looking like a smooth run, if maybe not quite enough for a new track record and the lead. 7th best speed down into the lower labyrinth. She held it together to take a second place finish at the line, but there were still 5 to go. Boss remained the leader as we got to the top 4. Brogan Crowley of Great Britain had slipped down the order. What about Mimi Reneva, a former medalist on this track as well, some 5 years earlier? She starts well and had an advantage of 1800s over Kimberly Boss from the first heat. But by the time she got down to the Kreisel, that had all but vanished, and mistakes lower down in the track would seal her doom. She too would drop behind the Flying Dutch Slider. On a similar Bromley sled, Reneva was not able to summon up the form she needed and slipped into 3rd at the line with 3 to go. First of whom, only 800s off the lead in the first heat, local heroine Janine Flock, a World Championship and World Cup medalist numerous times on this track, where she's been racing at the top level since 2011. Janine knows a thing or two about getting down this place fast and how to cheat the air in this glider's paradise, but even that was not enough to keep her in contention. Her second heat nowhere near as polished as her first, and not as quick either. She too would fall behind, tied with Reneva for 3rd, 2 to go. Incredibly, as we got to the first heat leader, 18-year-old Hallie Clark, in her last race in the World Cup this season, it was still Kimberly Boss of the Netherlands who led. Clark has a similar sliding style, free and easy, let it fly, and that's how she crushed the track record to take the lead in Heat 1. But she didn't have that same fluidity in the second run, and the further she slid, the smaller the gap shrank until it disappeared entirely. Hallie Clark coming to the line in 2nd place, and Kimberly Boss taking an unlikely victory from 11th in the first heat. So Clark, who was silver in her first World Cup outing in Whistler, takes silver in her last of the season, ahead of Kim Marmons, but the surprising winner, Kimberly Boss, despite that start mishap. Tina Hermann is our World Cup points leader with 1 to go. Last year's World Cup champion Kimberly Boss, hot on her heels. Still a bright, sunny afternoon with the track in perfect shape for the men, but they would race on into the darkness. Does that mean that they too would be inside the previous track record bests? Christoph Grootherr of Germany lying in 6th position after the first of 2 heats in Innsbruck, one of 3 men to tie for gold in the last race on this track just over 12 months earlier. But the Olympic champion not in the same form. A first heat that left him 33 hundredths off the lead, which had been set by track record breaking Matt Weston. A second heat that showed more promise. He came down nearly 3/10 quicker than his first effort down the track, the second fastest man ever down the mountain in Innsbruck. Grootherr was the leader as Yin Cheng of China came to line. The Push World Champion has an awesome start, but only had a couple of hundredths in hand after the first heat over his much more experienced German rival. Yet to taste a medal at the World Cup level, Yin Cheng had a 1/10 of a second lead at the crucial Kreisel, but an uncomfortable exit from there followed him down the track and the lead shrank. He was still just about in touch as they came out of the labyrinth, but slipped behind a spot. Grootherr led with 4 to go. And after Korea's Kim Ji-soo had fallen by the wayside, 3rd place in the first heat, Chen Wen-hao. Never in the medals in his short career, this is only his 8th World Cup race. 5th fastest starter in the first heat, he tied that in the second, and despite a couple of skids on corner exits, managed to keep up his speed. A great run down the track, 600s in front in the crucial 9 to 10 crossover. He was very clean, and he had just enough in hand to pip Grootherr at the line. 200s in it. Chen guaranteed his first ever medal. A big day for the Chinese slider. Could it be even better for Jung Seung-gui of Korea? 3 silver medals in his career. No Korean driver has ever won on this track in men's skeleton. Sung Bin-young, in his turn, took 4 silvers in 5 consecutive races in the last Olympic quad. Good speed early on, but it deteriorated a little coming down the track. He had enough in hand to take the lead away from Chen Wen-hao when it mattered, but only the 6th best speed at the bottom suggested that a victory might be a tough ask. Nevertheless, equaling a career-high silver medal. Jung had set the 2nd fastest ever run down this mountain. Matt Weston had been a couple of hundreds quicker in the first heat, but had a 2/10 advantage over the Korean slider from that first run. And it was evident right from the start that he was only going to build on that. Out of the Kreisel, perfect form. A tidier, more smooth-looking run than his first trip down, which itself had been the fastest ever, and he was in track record territory once more. At the line, the final run, 51.41, the fastest ever run down the track in Innsbruck, which has been alive since 1972. 2 track records, a crushing victory for Matt Weston, and Jung Seung-gui and Chen Wen-hao joined him on the podium. 1 race remains to decide the fate of the Crystal Globe. Christoph Grootherr leads Matt Weston up to 2nd now, and just 76 points behind. Saturday morning and milder conditions. Women's Monobob first in action on the historic Eagles track. Start record holder Cynthia Appiah lay in 6th position within shooting distance of the medals after the first of the 2 heats. The start record that she had set a year previously looked out of touch, but she equalled it with her second getaway, finding an extra 1/10 of a second in the push, and that was enough to accelerate her down the track way ahead of current leader Melanie Hassler of Switzerland. Appiah just out a 1/10 from the medals after the first run, looked like she was putting down a run to be a real contender. Smooth, controlled lines and high speed at the bottom put her name in the frame. And she would still be the leader as China's Ying Qing came to the line. She'd been also in touch with the medals, looking for a career best top 5 finish here. But she dropped behind Appia right from the start. Without that firepower at the getaway on the short Innsbruck track, she was always going to struggle for pace. Second quickest out of the Kreisel, it was a neat and tidy run, but she could do nothing to close the gap on the flying Canadian. Ying dropped down the order, and as she finished her run, Appia crept another step closer to the medals. Lara Nolte is the newly crowned Monobob World Champion, with 2 wins in Lake Placid and Winterberg and 2 silver medals as the highlights this season in the last 2 races in Altenburg. She also lies second in the World Cup rankings. And after the first heat, she was definitely in with a medal chance, but the second was not her best. Too many skids, hitting just about everything in sight on the Eagles track was always going to rob her of speed. And in the leader's box, Appia looked on as the new world champion sank behind her. Into the top 3, and Australia's Brianna Walker in the bronze medal position after a strong first heat. She too found more speed at the start in what will be her last World Cup outing of the season. In the last World Cup race in Altenburg, she claimed a bronze medal. She finished 4th in the World Championships in St. Moritz a week earlier. Narrowly behind at the Kreisel, she needed a great bottom part of the track to try and overhaul the Canadian. A couple of wavery moments, but she had just enough coming into the lower labyrinth to race ahead and guarantee herself at least a bronze medal, with Appia now in second. Kaylee Humphries had been in the silver medal position after the first of the 2 heats, always a contender in the mono or the women's bobsleigh. Another good start from the former Canadian, now American slider, and she was in touch. But the second heat was nothing like her first. Mistakes early on, and then lower down on the track as well, having to haul it off corner 9. Not from the top draw of Kaylee Humphries' drives. Some you win, some you lose. This was not one she was going to win. She dropped back to 3rd with 1 sled to go. Final sled on ice had been our first heat leader, Lisa Buchwitz. With the fastest start in the first heat, she didn't quite match Cynthia Appia's track record start in the second, but she had enough of an advantage over the Canadian to give her a little bit of a comfort blanket. A silver and a bronze medal in 2 races in North America had been her season highlights so far. She had not finished on the podium in a World Cup race in Europe up until now, but all that was about to change. After bronze in the World Championships, she went on to claim her first ever Monobob win as a driver here in Innsbruck, delighting herself. This will be her final World Cup outing as well. She does not go to Sigulda next week. That means Lisa Buchwitz uses her final joker to claim gold ahead of Brianna Walker and Cynthia Appia, the first win for the German driver. Kaylee Humphries is still our World Cup points leader. Lara Nolte will chase for the Crystal Globes in Sigulda, but we are done for the season with Lisa Buchwitz and Mono. As there is no space to get a 4-man down at the season's finale venue Sigulda, this weekend in Innsbruck it will be double 4-man duty. Saturday afternoon, their first race. Germany's Johannes Lochner lay in 5th position after the first of 2 runs down the Innsbruck track, the shortest in the business. And after the long flowing St. Moritz for the World Championships, this felt like it was all very rushed. A good strong start from his crew for Heat 2, top speed on the way down, and a nice flowing drive from one of the world's great 4-man exponents. brought France right back to the top of the pile, easing Patrick Baumgartner out of the lead, the Italian on his way to a top 6 finish, a best ever in the World Cup. And Hansi was the leader as our next man came to the ice. Markus Treichel of Austria, 4th after the first heat, just a couple of hundreds away from a medal. A first ever for him if he could achieve it, and on home ice as well. The track where he grew up, where his mum and dad still work in the race office. But today, it was not to be for Treichel. Dropping behind Lochner early on, he never quite found the pace in what still looked like a neat and tidy drive. Maybe just too much nerves, maybe too much control. Either way, Lochner had the lead, and Treichel would still gain a personal best here in Innsbruck with no worse than 5th. Emil Sapoulis had tied for silver with Brad Hall of Great Britain in the 4-man World Championships in St. Moritz a week earlier, and found himself in 3rd place, a couple of hundreds behind the Briton, chasing for the medals. His early advantage over Hansi Lochner started to evaporate. Skids creeping in to rob the speed of the sled. Down the bottom of the track, he was behind, and no chance to get back on such a short track. He would slip down into 2nd place. Lochner in the medals. Still an Innsbruck best for Sapoulis. Brad Hall has always fared well in the last few seasons here in 2-man and 4-man in Innsbruck, and has had a clutch of medals. It's a track the crew likes. They'd hoped to get under 5 seconds with their second start to pile the pressure on first heat leader Francesco Friedrich, but again, mistakes early in the run saw Brad Hall failing to take advantage of the quick getaway. Best speed on the ice, but he knew that Friedrich had sliced a quarter of a second out of his own track record to lead the first heat. Brad Hall, giving it everything with plenty of hometown support, would take at least a silver medal. 1 to go. Final sled, as so often is the case, Francesco Friedrich. 11 wins in the last 12 2-man starts, 5 consecutive 4-man wins for Friedrich here in Innsbruck, and today was to be no different. Having sliced 1400s out of his own track record from the first heat, he could not quite find that pace in the second, but he had more than enough in the tank, under pressure as ever this season from Brad Hall, to creep away and claim victory, and with it, to take the slenderest of leads in the race for the season-long title and the Crystal Globe. He's 15 points ahead. Hall must win tomorrow ahead of Friedrich to take the Crystal Globe as the season's champion. For now, though, Friedrich has his 4th win of the season, Brad Hall his 3rd, 2nd place, and Hansi Lochner again on the podium. A 6th consecutive win in Innsbruck for Francesco Friedrich. Who would bet against him for the final race of the season on Sunday? Sunday morning, and the women's bobsleigh taking to the ice. The labyrinth at the bottom of the Innsbruck track is very quick. Cynthia Appiah of Canada crashed out in the first heat, but she still crossed the line with her brakewoman Niamh Hockey. They were okay and went again in heat 2, breaking the track record on their way. In the top 5, Lisa Buchwitz of Germany with new brakewoman Marianne Herrmann. 2 good starts, and they were just 1900s off the gold after the first heat. Buchwitz knew that she would have to drive superbly. A couple of standard errors on the way down, but a fast run put her comfortably ahead of the then leader Angia Grecu of Romania. And Buchwitz was laying down a real marker. The top 4 ahead of her covered by just 700s, but the medals could literally go to almost any of them. A big second heat from Lisa Buchwitz to take the lead with 4 to go. Lara Nolte and Nela Schouten had crashed out of the Women's World Championships a week earlier in St. Moritz. Nolte then finished her St. Moritz week with a win in a multidiscipline men-women para-athlete one-off race, and so she was full of excitement for Innsbruck as she came to the track for the final run. A great start from the duo and fantastic driving from Lara Nolte would put them right in the frame, speeding away from Buchwitz, only 700s from the lead in the first heat, and a top-class drive from Lara Nolte again shattered the track record. She'd broken it in the first heat, only for Kaylee Humphries to break it again, but Nolte led. In the bronze medal position after the first of the two heats, Melanie Hassler in her final race of the season with brakewoman Nadia Pasternak. Two strong starts and she was right in the frame. 200s in it at the Kreisel. Out of the 270-degree corkscrew turn, she was still battling for supremacy, but only the third best speed in the bottom part of the track. And the tiniest of errors here can cost you. She dropped behind in the lower labyrinth and was in second place at the line with 2 to go. Had she lost a medal? Hassler had been 100th off silver, 300ths off gold. In the silver medal position in the first heat, Kim Kilicki and Leonie Fiebig. The new world champions again didn't make the best of the start. A quick getaway but an uncomfortable run through turns 1 and 2. But nevertheless, she had the lead early on over Lara Nolte. But by the Kreisel, the speed had vanished. She was on the back foot and the gap came down. By the time she got from 9 to 10, it had vanished. And in the lower labyrinth, she didn't have the pace of her teammate. She dropped behind by the tiniest of margins. Nolte led, 1 to go. Kaylee Humphries led by 200ths of a second after the first heat. 700ths over Lara Nolte in hand as she took to the start for the second time with brakewoman Keisha Love. They pulled out a 5:55 getaway, the fastest of the competition. Kaylee has had 1 win on the Innsbruck track in her career and a slew of other medals, but skidding early on was costing her time. By the Kreisel, she still had a time advantage, but no speed to back it up. And that time quickly evaporated. Behind, going into the labyrinth, she tumbled out of the medals entirely, only 4th place at the line. Victory for Lara Nolte and Nela Schouten. Disappointment for Kaylee Humphries and Keisha Love. Out of the medals, the silver going to Kilicki and Fiebig, the bronze to Hassler and Pasternak, as Lara Nolte and Nela Schouten claim victory and take the World Cup points lead with just 1 race remaining. 3 in it, all to be decided in Latvia. The final 4-man bobsleigh race of the season, Sunday afternoon in Innsbruck. Final heat of the season for the 4-man and another chance for the young Latvian Emil Tsoupulis to really put the cat among the pigeons. His crew, the fastest starting in the first heat, ripped off another 5:02 getaway to give him a chance of moving up from 5th place. Yesterday, the first day of 4-man action, he'd been in the top 4, having dropped out of the medals 3rd from the first heat. But the joint silver medalist in the World Championship had enough to put himself into the lead, ahead of Patrick Baumgartner of Italy, who recorded yet another top 6 finish. 4th after the first heat and on target for a career best result, Austria's Markus Treichel. With Sascha Stepan, Markus Sammer and Sebastian Mitra behind him getting great starts once more, 4th fastest in the field. But as on the previous day, in the second run, it looked as though a neat, tidy drive was not being rewarded with big speed. He dropped behind Tsoupulis early and never found the pace to challenge the Latvian the further the track elapsed. The man who grew up on this track would finish the season with his 5th place result, just behind the Latvian at the line. Into the top 3, and the 3 final sleds had all broken the track record in turn in the first heat. First of all, it had been Johannes Lochner, with Florian Bauer, Eric Bruckert and Christian Rass back on the sled after being too ill to compete in the World Championships. Hansi had a great opportunity to claim another medal here, having moved up on the first day into the bronze position. And he used his knowledge and experience this track superbly once more. The newly crowned two-man world champion would end the season with his 4th bronze medal, to go with a silver he'd earned in North America. Winless in the four-man, but he is the new two-man world champion. So it came down to one run for 2 sleds. Brad Hall and Francesco Friedrich's crews had come in tied for the Crystal Globe with 2 races to go. Friedrich took the advantage by 15 points, winning on Saturday. Hall had to win on Sunday to take it back and claim that crown. The fastest start of the competition from the team and a great drive from Brad Hall would put him comfortably ahead of Johannes Lochner. Then it was all down to what Francesco Friedrich could do, but Brad gave it absolutely everything, rounding out the best bobsleigh season by a British driver in a quarter of a century. So, would it be a 4th silver or a 4th gold for Brad Hall? Francesco Friedrich, Torsten Margis, Candy Bauer and Alex Schuller ripped off the fastest start of the weekend with a 4:99, and Friedrich looked on his way at the Kreisel. He was in front, but then the tricky corner 9 to 10 transition cost him huge speed. He nearly parked the sled. He just had enough in the final few hundred meters to cling on. His 5th gold of the season, the World Cup champion for the 5th successive year. 4 silvers and 3 golds for Brad Hall, 5 golds, 2 silvers for Francesco Friedrich, and both of them with one 4th place finish. 1900s in it in the end, and Francesco Friedrich, the World Cup champion for the 5th successive year in the four-man. 3rd spot in the overall season podium goes to Hansi Lochner. Brad Hall, the best British bobsledder in a quarter of a century, takes the silver. After a fantastic weekend of racing, just one more World Cup weekend remains at Sigulda in Latvia as we head further east to round out the season.